Today I have Lacy Borgo back on the show. I haven't talked to Lacy for a while, and I wanted to catch up with all of
Mhm.
her amazing work with the children, and also talk to her about how the pandemic has affected them. So, Lacy, I'm going to let you introduce yourself today. So go
Hmm.
for
Hmm. Let's see. I'm Lacy Borgo,
it.
and I, I I I often like to introduce myself with the thing that's most truest about me. I think bios can sort of reduce us; they're very reductionary.
Yes.
So maybe I can say, I am one in whom the eternal lives. And I get to be present to others in whom the eternal lives.
Beautiful.
Uh,
And uh, tell us a little bit about where you work and what you
yeah.
do.
So I am a spiritual director, which is I accompany people in their life with God. And that means I accompany adults, but I also accompany children at Haven House, which is a facility for families without homes in Olathe, Colorado. And I've been doing that for like 8 years. And I did my doctoral work on what that might look like, and I continue to teach spiritual direction and train spiritual directors and spiritual directors with children. I train them through an organization called the Companioning Center, and I train people from every kind of tradition and every kind of belief. Mm.
Wow, that is so beautiful. Do you find that, okay, so you're in a small town and a lake that's even smaller, isn't it? How big is that town? I don't know.
Olathe is not very big. I think
Yes,
there's one flashing light. That's it.
yes, yes. So when someone gets a degree or
Mhm.
becomes educated in this sort of thing, which that raises a question in itself, the education gives your heart is is always full of love. But how do you find
Mm.
communities that want someone who does spiritual direction? I would like to think that everyone does that, but
Well, it's spiritual direction is an accompaniment kind of ministry, and it has Sufi roots, it has Christian roots, and my particular formation comes through the Christian tradition, in particular the Quaker tradition. I was trained
yes.
in the Quaker tradition, and I think of listening, accompanying someone in their being and becoming, and they're kind of awaking to the divine or the eternal within them, surrounding them. This is to sort of use the Quaker Douglas Steere, I'll borrow his words, that we listen another's soul into disclosure and discovery. And this
Mhm.
is what presence, true, pure presence is, listening another's soul into disclosure and discovery. And who doesn't want that?
Ah, and I remember you saying listening another person to life.
Yeah. Mm,
Yes.
mm,
So
mm,
beautiful, somewhat the same. Wow. Well, I want to talk about again about your work with the children. So let's start with when you were a child and briefly
mm,
tell us a little bit about that.
mm. I think one of the things certainly that informed my curiosity that has led me to this path is I was raised in a conservative Christian tradition, and and they that gave me some very good through lines. It helped me to think. It helped me to reflect. It helped me to know that I was loved. And then perhaps the divine lover of our souls decided to go a little bit further than those boundary places. And so as a kid, we lived in Moab, Utah, and the LaSalle Mountains there. And this was about the early 70s. And my parents, we were going up into the LaSalles to cut some firewood. And I wandered off in the midst of a grove of aspen trees in the fall. And the flickering of the aspen leaves in the sun, that wonderful golden color really drew me in. And I remember feeling like I needed to get a better look. So I laid down on the squishy earth, and I could smell it. It still has that sort of wet, wonderful smell to it that we get in the aspens in the fall here. And I just looked up and I had a visceral sense that I was not alone, and that whatever was with me loved me. It was a sense of safety and connectedness. And I think it's that curiosity that has kept me learning. I mean, I have a doctorate degree, what they call a terminal degree, which feels so terrible to say because I'm always learning, always, always, always learning. So those
Well,
are my first experiences that kind of whet my curiosity.
right. And can you tell us a little bit about your work with children, how it was that came about, and maybe share a story with us, maybe
Mhm.
of Christopher or another story that you
Mhm.
might want to share that really touched you, because I find these stories kind of sum up what you do.
Mm, mm. My first sort of inkling into the spiritual world of children, um, besides my own reflection on my own spiritual life as a child, had to do when I was a public school teacher in Rochester, New York. So before we lived in Colorado, we lived in Rochester for 8 years. And Christopher was not allowed to eat in the lunchroom any longer. He had gotten into some trouble, and I was a first year public school teacher, and he was relegated to eat lunch with me, his teacher, every single day for the rest of the year. What a terrible punishment for the child. And I was so young and inexperienced beyond my even realization. um, and very tired. I was very tired. And so I didn't ask him any questions during our lunch period together. I didn't try to have things for him to do. I didn't try to entertain him or teach him. I just needed both of us to inhabit the same place. But what I found is with just being in the same place, inhabiting the same place with Christopher, meant that he began to talk about his inner life. And sometimes I would start to ask him questions out of, I think, maybe really just exhaustion. I just wanted him to talk so I didn't have to fill the space, about goodness, beauty, and truth. And I knew those to be kind of transcendentals, bringing us to the core of what it means to really live. So he started to open up his inner world to me, to talk about his experience, the goodness of his grandmother, the goodness of the the vice principal of the school. He began to talk about beauty in the inner city of Rochester, which he opened my eyes to. He began to talk about I think about the word truth being what is indeed real. So he began to talk about the reality of his own family's pain and his pain. And again, I taught him nothing. I just listened. But what I noticed is something in the disclosure connected us. And in that connection was security that began to shift and change how he was, and probably how I was.
Wow. So how did he change you?
Oh, I think he deepened me in every way. He helped me realize how my own assumptions sort of kept me from a depth of life. I come from West Texas originally, and West Texans is terrible, violent language, but we use the word like kill shot. But I think assumption is the kill shot to wonder.
Interesting.
If we come in with assumptions about another person, about their experience, about the divine, it just waylays, it drains all the life out of wonderment.
Wow. So, what would you suggest to people who are working with children or even parents
Mm.
that want to have these spiritual conversations with their children? I know that's a big question, but
Yeah. Well, I think there's kind of a couple of things we can do. I like to use an acronym BOW, bow. And the first, the B, stands for body. First is just to make sure that our bodies are in an open posture. And that means that even if our child doesn't lay down their electronic device, we lay down ours. So we free our hands and our bodies to be fully present to the other. We make sure that our arms aren't crossed, that we don't look in a way that's closed off, and that we sort of move a little bit close so that we can kind of make a place for this important connection. The other is openness. O for openness. So we check in with ourselves internally. How is our openness towards the other? Are we open to whatever our child may want to share with us? Where are our assumptions? What
right.
assumptions are we making about what the child may say? And the last is W, which is wonder. Um, how can you cultivate your own wonder, your own curiosity about what is happening within the child or in their life, even as they are discovering their depth of self and maybe who they are in the world? And if we can do those three things, conversation can find a home between the two of us.
Do you feel that the less words an adult and questions an adult brings into the conversation, the better?
Generally so. That's generally so. Just
Okay.
asking those open-ended questions, not yes or no, um, but ones that are like, I mean, I love the phrase, what is that like for you? Not assuming that we know. So maybe our child comes home from school and we're having some conversations around, what was it like to have to wear a mask all day long for them? Or what was it like when, maybe someone that they really are friends with, wasn't at school because of quarantine and COVID? Or what was it like to have a friend whose parent or grandparent has died? Or perhaps what is it like for them to have lost someone during COVID? We want to be sure and say, what is that like for you? And not assume that we know, because that opens up the experience for them. And it helps us to do that one thing we all need, which is connection at an intimate level.
Is this how you work with adults also? Because it seems like it would make a lot of sense.
It is. It is in many ways. It is how I work with adults. We all of us adults have our inner child that we bring with us.
Right.
We bring our inner child, our inner adolescent into every experience. And what is true for the child is almost always true for the adult.
Mhm. So, Lacey, how do you use nature to, you live in such a gorgeous place,
Mm.
and I know Good Dirt Ministries that comes from. I envision you got you out in the in the dirt, which I
Thank you.
love. How do you use nature to help start the spiritual conversation with a child?
Mm, mm,
For example, talking to flowers, or, something,
mm.
maybe some shamanic things.
Uh, well, it depends on the child
Yeah.
because we all sort of have a unique fit. So, for example, this summer, I met with the children at Haven House in group spiritual direction outside. And we got in a circle and we ended up making nature mandalas together as we processed where we were and what had happened in the pandemic. We began our time with a body prayer that was part of welcoming goodness and beauty and truth. And we would name those um, moments of goodness and beauty and truth together. We'd actually open our arms up wide as we could
Mm.
and welcome all of the goodness and beauty and truth into us. And then as we got our hands we let them sort of trace our bodies. When they got down to our knees, we cupped them like little cups. And we talked for just a moment about some of the things that had brought us tears. So almost like we were holding our own tears. Children have experienced an enormous amount of loss during the pandemic. And so we wanted to honor those losses in holding our tears. And so we would cup our hands holding the tears and then pitch them behind us. So a releasing of them.
Mm.
And sometimes we named those same tearful things over and over again because we speak ourselves into healing from that. And that often needs to happen many times in a row. So that's how we began. And then we would sit in our circle. And I sort of began with go and collect 3 objects. So we're outside. Haven House has a beautiful outside, beautiful mature trees, little bushes, rocks, grass, sticks. And so they were to go and pick 3 things that represented, and then we went again over something good, a good story they would like to tell. And then, so we'd sit in the circle and they'd put their 3 things in the shape of a triangle. They would tell their stories. And then it was go and get 5 things in nature that represent beauty, something that is beautiful to you. And, so they're all wandering and collecting and then coming
Right.
back and creating their mandalas. And we just kept on going out and out and out. And the mandala itself was a prayer, an expression of being heard and seen, of connecting, of unearthing those wounds that we've all incurred.
Mm. So, with the mandala, could you just explain that briefly for those who don't know what that means?
Yeah, it's a bit of a visual representation. It's a some people see it as a piece of art. Particular traditions, mandalas are prayer, but it's taking these objects, sometimes color, sometimes drawn, and creating this circular pattern that grows exponentially outward. And
Like
we
a
have,
spiral.
yeah, it can be a spiral. It can
Yeah,
be, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And go ahead, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, and it is such a, for children, all the dimensions of their person are still synced. So as we age, we split our dimensions, and we sort of, if we are wired as such, we sort of give rational um, and mind ways of being kind of our highest priority, and our bodies may trail behind our awareness of bodies. But for children, it hasn't split into hierarchy. It's all integrated. So if we want to teach children to pray, their bodies have to be involved because they have not made them into a hierarchy as of yet. So mandalas are just a way to help their bodies, their sight, their smell, all the bits of them get involved in this experience.
Right. I heard you say, it may have been our last interview, but
Mhm.
when a child throws a temper tantrum, that just shows you that they're in, everything's integrated. It's their voice, their energy, their feelings, their all of it, their body, you know.
That
Or
child is fully present. Now their
yes,
parent, who is looking very calm on the outside but might be losing it inwardly,
right, right.
has split the self, which is not good or bad, it just is.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
You also talk about the importance of giving to a child
mm,
space and time.
mm,
And can you talk about that?
mm. Well, children process and move with a more expansive consciousness than adults do. We have thought wrongly. There's a wonderful book. I think her name is Alison Gopnik. Wrote The Philosophical Baby. And it's a wonderful book about the expansive consciousness of children. We thought wrongly for such a long time that children didn't have this sort of inner consciousness, which is wrong. They do. It is expanding, it is expansive, and they are taking it all in. So the way, and this is written, Alison Gopnik is a neurobiologist, I believe. And for adults, our consciousness actually has narrowed so that we have already taken some things out and placed others in a hierarchy. Like, this is most important right now, so I'm going to pay attention to this. And we do it without even choice any longer. It is a habitual pattern for adults. But for children, that habitual pattern has not been laid down. And so their awareness and consciousness is incredible. It is vast, broad, high, deep. It's just very large. And so what we may not see, they do. And because of the vastness, they need more space and more time to drink it in.
Wow. And how do you suggest one gives that to them? Like at what time? I mean, not at what time, but yeah. So can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, it just means that we take a slower pace. You
Right.
know, I find that, I have two children of my own. And I'm just half a year from being an empty nester. But I can remember when they were little, and everything just took so long. Shoes, getting into the car to go somewhere. The trip down the driveway to check the mail took so long. And the reason is they've got way more to take in than we do.
Yeah.
And we want to let them have that. Is part of healthy development, is to take it all in. We don't need to rush the narrowing.
In Telluride, Colorado, where I spend a lot of time, my friend runs teeny weenies. And teeny weenies are for 3 and 4 year olds. And we used to laugh because we would talk about, well, what did you do today? And they would like walk 2 blocks and then come back. And that's as far as they got because they had to look at every butterfly, every stone, the snack time. I mean, that takes a long
That's exactly right.
Right,
And
right.
I mean, children don't need a packed schedule, because their consciousness is much more expansive. They will get more out of an event, an experience, than any adult, but they just need the space and time to take it all in.
Right.
I make this joke with my kids all the time that we have the cleanest driveway in all of Western Colorado, because when they were little, I washed all the gravel in their pockets. And as I
Whether
was like,
you wanted to
"Here's
or
some
not.
that's right, here's some more rocks that we have."
Yes.
Um, and, but that's just kind of their nature. It's how
Yeah.
they are.
Could you speak on that a bit about they don't need a packed schedule? I think our
Mm,
world needs to hear that.
mm, mm. Well, I think, um, as parents, we hear the cry of "I'm bored" as a cry of distress, from our children, rather than, a statement of desire. So "I'm bored" doesn't mean, I need you to fill, even though it can feel that way, I need you to fill this space with
Right.
something. It instead is an invitation, I think, to curiosity. What can we be more curious about? What kind of sensory
Mhm.
experience are we in much need of? And outside certainly is full body and invites us to spiritual experience, physical experience, intellectual experience. All of that is sort of the table is set for humanity when we are outside.
Mhm. And it's so important for adults to also mentor that
Mm,
curiosity. I had
mm,
a someone said to me just this morning, she said, I don't have anything to do. I went through my email box is clean. I went through Instagram. I looked at my YouTube video and I don't have anything to do.
mm,
And it just struck me that is that where our world is, in terms of, I mean, no judgment, but
mm,
what about reading a book, playing a music, learning an instrument,
mm,
doing
mm,
something.
mm,
And if adults can mentor that, don't you think it's just so beneficial for the children?
mm, mm. I think if you're using the word mentor in the way that I love it in terms of being with,
Right.
and like when I sit with adolescents, like Instagram and social media, man, it has saved their bacon during the global pandemic.
Right.
It
Right.
really has. It's helped them stay connected to community. For many, not all, but for many, it has been a soul saver, for
Mm,
adolescents. But I think it's important for us to not, sort of go, totally against social media of any
right.
kind, but instead sort of keep it within its boundary in terms of it only meets, kind of one need. It only touches one of our senses. So we can't smell on it, we can't taste it, and we can't touch it.
Mm,
And we are human beings. And so we need that full bodily expression. So be on your Instagram, do your social media, and then make a
get
cake
outside.
and eat
Right.
it with the people that you love. And then, dig a hole in the front yard, fill it with water, and let your kids play in the mud all afternoon.
Yeah.
And then we my during the pandemic, my youngest daughter took up skiing and Telluride.
Mm.
So we've lived here for 20 years and we've never skied. It's
Amazing.
pitiful. It's my public confession. But she learned to ski, and I'm not a skier, but I'd fill up a big huge thing of hot tea and go sit outside and watch the people and all of this wonderful experience. So we did social media. She did social media, and then we went and did our body. So let's keep
Right.
it in balance. I think in balance is what we're talking about here. And
Right.
I think that the thing, like, I've thought about this a lot, clearly, because I have adolescence is just a time where social media has got there's just a difficult dance happening here.
Mhm.
And I think the one danger is that it can lure us into forgetting our humanity. And we want to remember that we are embodied creatures and we need to get all of our senses in on our life.
Very well put. Let's talk a little bit about pings of the divine and the importance of prayer.
Mm.
And you've already touched on meeting a child where they are, but what do you mean by that pings of divine? And if you could just talk about prayer a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to explain to a group of 7th grade boys about the resonances that happen within us. So all of us have been longed into existence by the divine love. And we are beings of desire and longing. So we long back. And goodness, beauty, truth, wonder, awe, unity, all of those are pings, are resonances. They're a homing signal, if you would say, to human and divine connection. And so I was trying to explain this to these boys, and I was doing a pitiful job until one of them said to me, "Oh, miss, it's like when you lose your phone and your laptop can ping your phone to find it." I was like, "Oh, dude, you just totally saved my bacon here. Thank you, thank you." That is
Exactly.
what it's like.
Yeah.
It is a soul ping. And so I have the wonderful opportunity of living where I can see both the Cimarrons and the San Juans on my back deck. And no person who has ever come to visit me, no matter their age, no matter their religious or no religious affiliation, steps off the back deck, lets their eyes rest on those mountain ranges. Immediately, without thinking about it, their shoulders go back and drop, their jaw drops, their pulse slows, and they go, "Oh," because awe pings. It resonates something so deep in every one of us that says, I have been longed into existence. I am a human being. I am part of this wonder and beauty that I see. And it's better than any Instagram post, that's for sure.
And the power of prayer.
Well, I've just written a children's book that will come out in October of this year.
Did I tell you I wrote a children's book?
No.
Oh, I have to send it to you. I'll get your address after the interview. Yeah. Oh, well, you know what? I'll actually drop it off at your house. I'm coming back in a few weeks.
Oh, that would be perfect. That would be wonderful.
So what is it about?
It's called All Will Be Well. And it is about a little girl who accompanies her grandmother through death. And the Christian mystic, Lady Julian, wrote long ago. So she's from I believe she's like the 14th century. Julian of Norwich, she wrote about a mystical experience that she had where God was telling her how much and how powerful God's love is. And so she had a vision of a hazelnut in her hand. And God was saying, because I love it, it exists. And its existence can never be threatened. And so the little girl in the book is having these conversations with her grandmother about the nature of love and about how whatever is love exists. And so she's walking through and she has this playful experience with hazelnuts and trees, that God is using them to remind her of being loved. And there is a process that she goes through in the grief of losing her grandmother. and it is her processing her grief through the lens of love with the help of trees and hazelnuts.
Ah, beautiful. And when will that be out?
It'll be out October, early
Wonderful.
October.
Ah, I'm
Yeah.
so excited
And I'll
about that.
send you a copy.
Okay. And of course, we have to mention your book, one of my favorites, Spiritual Conversations with Children. That book was just coming out the last time
Yes,
we
last time.
interviewed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I've got a copy. I meant to have it right here. But do you have a copy of it?
Yeah, I sure do.
Yeah,
Right
yeah.
here.
And we talked a little bit about that, the front of it, that beautiful
Oh,
picture.
the
Yeah,
art is gorgeous. Yeah.
yeah. So we need to wrap it up, but I did just want to mention one of the activities that you suggested for people, and it's so simple yet so difficult for so many to do because it's so crazy with time, but this is a great time to start this, is to go out every day with your child and lay under the clouds for 30 minutes.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just observe together what you see, and
Right.
keeping that body openness and wonder about what they share. Recently, a parent shared with me during, they were really looking for a way to keep some continuity and some life during this very difficult season of COVID. So they picked one tree that they would go to visit and observe every day. So it was one that was just out in their front yard, and everybody would go out at the same time every day. And for the last for 18 months, they noted the changes in the tree. And it was a time to have honest conversation about how things were going. And it's as if the tree, it was a deciduous tree. So as it lost its leaves, they had the opportunity to grieve. As they trudged out into the snow, they felt the icy cold. So it was a chance to work through some of those difficult emotions. As spring, it was time to celebrate the buds when they came out.
Mm-hmm.
And without kind of this shifting lockdown and people at home, they would have never observed these 4 seasons. Even after 18 months, they are circling back around again. Of this tree kind of marking time and marking life for them. And so that's another one folks can try.
Yeah.
Is, find one tree that you can gather under and observe conversation.
Right. Even if it's at a park, or
Yeah.
if you live in the city, or there's
Mhm.
just so much out there. Well,
Mhm.
is there anything else you would like to mention or say before we wrap it up? Any words of wisdom?
Mm. I think maybe the word of wisdom I would want to give has to do with us being in a pandemic right now. Children have suffered traumatic losses, both at school, and we all have within family and social structure. Children need a listening, attentive, welcoming adult right now. And I hope that you can be that for a child. And I hope that you can find someone to listen to your own inner child, who undoubtedly has struggled in the last couple of years. And I wish you all the peace.
Thank you, Lacy.
Mm.
Thank you.
Mm.
Wow. Well, have a great evening. Give Ridgeway a big hug from me. I'll be out there soon, and I can't wait to meet you in person.
Yes, I
Yeah.
would be so thrilled to see your book. Oh my
Yes,
goodness.
yes.
Wonderful,
Well,
wonderful.
thank you so
You're
much,
welcome.
and I will see you soon.
Okay, peace to you. Peace to you.
Okay, you too. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.